286, vote Ed. Polls stay open 2 hours afterwards. I had to do that. Good morning. My name is Ed Durbin. I'm the Director of Retail Solutions for AirWatch. This is my 4th global conference in a row, and as advertised, these keep getting bigger and better, and we at AirWatch are very, very happy to be here, and thank you for having us. Today I have the great privilege of introducing our Chairman of the Board, Mr. Alan Dabbiere. But to step back, before starting AirWatch, Alan was the founder and CEO, Chairman of the Board of Manhattan Associates, where he took a company of a handful of people in the 90s and grew it into a worldwide company with over 2,000 employees, with having offices all over the world, and turned that company into a worldwide leader in supply chain. He stepped off the board, took a little time off, had a family, relaxed a little bit. He wants to do it again. And what he wants to do, the same way he attacked supply chain in the 90s, he's attacking the mobility world today. So you want to talk about innovation and technology, the next 2 speakers, that's what you're going to hear. I don't want to say too much because they got some really good content. But there's one last thing I want to leave you with. One of Alan's major accomplishments was marrying his wife, Ashley, who's here in the crowd, who was a University of Arizona graduate. So ladies and gentlemen, my friend Alan Dabbiere.
Thank you very much for that. And Terry, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I would like to say, and thank you to the University of Arizona, and if my wife is any image of the kind of student you produce and person you produce, hats off. Keep doing that, because I couldn't be more pleased. And I had to say that, or else I wouldn't get to go home tonight. She has, in fact, given me 4 beautiful children that are 7 and under, so I'm traveling. That's really the reason I started another company. I can get a better night's sleep on a red eye to Europe than I can in my own home these days. So my first company was in warehousing and distribution, and I'll say, one difference is when you go to a cocktail party and start talking about warehousing and distribution, even if it's a billion-dollar company, you can be the loneliest guy in the room in about 15 minutes. Today, when you talk about mobility, you're going to have standing room only. I mean, this is mobility, 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 mobility. Everyone wants it. Everyone's talking about it. Steve Jobs changed the world. Everybody's talking about what they carry in their pocket, and it's everywhere, and it's being used socially. It's changing the way we do things. So AirWatch, our goal is not on the consumer side, but on the enterprise side. We're trying to manage and control this explosion of mobility that's taking off, all these different types of devices. It used to be a BlackBerry world. They had a piece of software that could control it. So we're doing mobile device management to try to help companies get their arms around the entire process of configuring, managing, securing, and handling all of this mobility. And it was really at Manhattan Associates where a lot of mobility was used that I got the real appreciation that mobility is death by 1,000 cuts. God knows every one of these devices needs to be secured, controlled, managed, configured, and the end user supported. And so we've got about 1,000 customers, including companies like Walmart, where we've been selected to manage about 650,000 devices. Target, Best Buy, Home Depot. We're doing GE's Employee Liable Smartphone Program. And so I'm here to talk about sort of some of the interesting ways people are using mobility from an enterprise level, not so much the consumer level. So as I said, I mean, mobility has just exploded. People care about it. People care about what they've got in their pocket. They talk about it. They talk about their features. It starts out, you've got a tablet. It's got no camera. It's got 1 camera. It's got 2 cameras. It's got 3 cameras. It's got peripheral vision. I don't know where this is going to go. So I've got a really quick video that I think really kind of talks to what people are doing with these things and the explosion, the arms race of features and functions.
I can watch live TV on my new Sprint phone.
Well, my Sprint phone has TV and downloads music.
I can check email.
I have that. And crime deterrent.
What?
Try and take my wallet.
Give me your...
Live TV, wireless music downloads, email, and crime deterrent.
I'm filing a grievance, Ben.
On the Sprint PowerVision network.
These things do everything, for God's sakes. They'll protect your home. So who in this room does not have a smartphone, for gosh sakes? I probably wouldn't see many people raise their hands. I talk about them becoming ubiquitous. They're all over. They're changing the way we communicate, the way we find our friends, the way we live, the way we work, and of course, the way we shop. The mobile phone is becoming our credit card. It's replacing our wallet. It's becoming our car key. It's becoming our room key at a hotel. You go out and rent a car, and it's going to become your car key. And someday, it's probably going to be your ID. It is certainly more secure than a driver's license. If people talk about productivity improvements, they'll often say that the personal computer really drove the 1980s and the improvements in the stock market and the global productivity and economy, and they'll say that the laptop did that in the 90s and the internet did that in the 2000s, and looking forward to the 2010, this is the decade of mobility. Everybody's jobs are changing. The use of these devices are changing. And again, this is now about enterprise mobility, not the social side. So after 20 years of dealing these, it's this understanding that these devices are everywhere and the difficulty in managing and controlling them. And another great Verizon ad that I love is the one where somebody has a problem with their phone and they turn around and there's the entire Verizon company behind them. Well, Javier will tell you today with Coke that when they're delivering Coke in Sri Lanka and somebody's got a problem with mobility and they turn around, there's nobody there. These devices need to be secured, controlled. The end users need to be supported. These devices are being used in so many different new and innovative ways. Just a handful of examples that are non-retail, but we worked with BP on the BP cleanup, managing every worker, their location, where they were, and all that was done with essentially mobile phones and mobile computers. We work with home healthcare companies that use consumer-grade smartphones. They go in the home, they take all of the vital statistics of the patient. They also take wound photographs that are emailed and viewed by doctors in an area called telehealth to decide if that person needs to go into the hospital or if they're okay to stay in sight in their home. If the person looks like they might have had a stroke, they can take a minute of video, email that video to a neurologist who can determine what's the course of treatment. Because if you get the right medications to someone who's had a stroke within minutes or hours versus a longer time, it could be the difference between full recovery and being ambulatory for the rest of your life. We are seeing these devices being used in hotels by concierge. We have got a project going on with Alaska Air to use an iPad to replace the 35 pounds of documents and manuals and maps and charts that they carry. What was the cost justification? Fuel savings. You carry 35 pounds of stuff long enough in an airplane, and it actually comes down to that. Zipcar is a great, interesting example. Zipcar is in universities and in cities where you use cars by the hour. You can rent the car on your iPhone. When you show up, it knows you've shown up. It actually starts the car and turns on the light so you know quickly where your car is. Your cell phone is your key to the car, and they can track your entire usage of that car to the point you drop it off. We're working with a company called DynCorp. They've got 11,000 employees, government contractor. 2/3 of them are in Afghanistan and Iraq. They are using the smartphone in order to gather all their time and expense reports. And that requires an enterprise app store to deploy all their apps. They've now further used it to roll out all of their human resource policy changes to these 11,000 employees because they've had a tremendous time trying to communicate with them. We're working with the Army where they've got a FIPS 140 or highly secured encrypted shell for all of the training manuals. And the Army is looking to roll out a smartphone to every troop that goes out. Number one, for situational awareness. You know, the military is scared to death of mobility, but they say we're losing out. Our enemy combatants have more information than we do. We've got to get over the security issues, but we've got to have situational awareness. Number two is all of these training opportunities that we're missing. Number three is it entertains the troops. And they will put a $50 card from Google or Apple in that bag when the person joins, because entertaining the troops reduces the amount of psychological problems when they come back. Because what you do at war mostly is wait. And that's what's so devastating. And then Apple, of course, has changed the world in retail. You know, you think about the traditional retail experience and somebody engages you, they work with you, they show you product, they talk to you about it, you get convinced to buy it, and they point you to a register. And you have that moment of that moment where you say, do I really want this or not? And so often do you see product that's been picked up, wanted, but sat down and walked out. Somehow when you're at the Apple store, you magically, your credit card lifts up out of your wallet. As you're standing there engaged with the person, ownership of that device transfers from them to you. As you're walking out of the store, you're saying to yourself, did I really want this? But you own it. Mobile point of sale, mobile engagement, staying engaged with that customer. We are working with one of the largest consumer electronics retailers in the world, and they are arming every one of their sales associates with a tablet. And their comment is, thanks to the internet, every person who walks into our store knows more about the product they want to buy than our sales associate. We've got to give them a technology to answer one question right during that interaction. What they know is that people really go into the store because they've done their research and they want to see the product, and one more question comes up. And if that question can be answered, that translates into a sale. If they can't get that question answered, they go home. And then the odds of buying it from that retailer are much lower sitting in the living room than when they are sitting and standing in that store ready to purchase. So it's good business. And they said, we're going to have to retrain our sales associates not to try to learn all the information about 1,000 SKUs, but how to find out how to answer questions about the 1,000 SKUs that we're selling today. Because the earlier example is a no-win situation. They can't know those 1,000 SKUs. So the whole result of all this has been this explosion in operating systems, formats, handhelds. You've got these three major platforms today: the iPhone, the Android, the Windows Phone 7 platform that's now emerging. And no one knows where this is going. And it's so reminiscent of those of you that remember 20 years ago, we had three PC platforms. And there was the Apple, and of course Apple said we need to own the hardware and the software. And it did limit the form factor of development. There was Unix, where there was 50 flavors of Unix that drove the development community crazy. And then there was Windows that came along late with a graphical user interface, but had a very standard product, but ultimately lots of form factors. I am not saying that I have any idea what direction this is going to go today, but we know how it turned out the first time. But it's a very interesting moment right now that the selections and these choices, and Android is now really diversifying as a platform, as each one of these manufacturers can do different things with it. But incredible amount of form factors and types of devices. The result of all of this has been the need for management and security. These devices are not phones anymore. They are computers. They have lots of information on them. Thanks to Wendy's, I use the expression today of the finger in the chili problem. This is where something that doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's going to be front page news. And I will say that I do believe that there's going to be a situation where a merger or an acquisition is derailed or some very important information gets out. I will tell you that we had 3 projects in January where a CEO or a senior executive got onto an airplane. You know, these devices are just the right size where you can't fit them in your pocket, but they go right into that first class seat very, very conveniently. And they get left behind. And one of these was an investment bank. And I will tell you that any email that an investment banker has can be a $50 million lawsuit. So it created real fire drills. There's also the world that's emerging of employee liable devices. We are working with General Electric, and their new philosophy is that anybody can buy whatever technology they want. We don't want to be in the business of selecting the technology for our employee. And as a matter of fact, employees coming out of, or potential employees coming out of school today, if you tell them we're a Dell and BlackBerry shop, they may not take the job, but they look at that and say, that tells me a lot about the personality about that company, and it can influence their decision. Secondly, Apple's got a great story about, when the 4.0 phone came out, of the employee-owned devices, something like 50% of them magically had a problem within 3 months. They got, eaten by the dog, they got dropped in the toilet, they got run over by the car, everybody wants this latest and greatest. And companies are trying to move away from that and say, you buy the technology you want, we will give you a stipend, but we want it to be your device. And so GE considered how they roll this out, and they said, great, when an employee leaves, we're gonna have to wipe that phone. And they said, great, we'll just have them sign a waiver that says we are allowed to wipe that phone. And then they thought twice about it and said, with 206,000 employees, we're not going to, if this really isn't something we can do, we're not going to have a lawsuit. We're going to have a class action suit. So they waited until they found technology where you can separate these devices into a personal profile and a corporate profile. Someone leaves the company, you only take away all the corporate information. You're not going to take away 3 years of family photos, the music collection, the personal apps, and all of that. Well, during all of this, there's been a case that's happened where an employee separated from a company. They wiped his phone. The problem was he was in the middle of a custody battle for his child. And they wiped all the evidence that was in text and photographs and only on the device, and it is not going well. So these are all new privacy issues that are happening as these devices, nobody wants to carry 2 devices, so it's this changing world of how do I have a single device, my choice of device, and compromise the security and the privacy issues between the individual and the employer. So finally, these things are becoming expensive. And we've got a customer that is a consulting firm, and they say one of the most expensive things we ever do is put a guy on a plane to India. And he gets up in the air for 24 hours. His wife sends him 10 photos of the kids. He doesn't turn his phones off. By the time he lands, we've already got a $500 phone bill. These smartphones are sucking up so much data. You put them on a roaming plan, and they can become very, very expensive. Just these are little images of how these devices are proliferating, exploding, and need to be managed and secured, and they're becoming overwhelming for the IT department. So with that, I want to introduce Javier Polit. He's the CIO of the Bottling Investment Group of Coke. They've got 110,000 mobile devices and mobile computers that they manage, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the challenges day-to-day operationally they have, how they're solving them, and how they solve this problem of death by 110,000 cuts. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So I guess it's between me and this presentation and lunch, so we'll try to do the best that we can. But first of all, I want to thank the University of Arizona, Terry, and the Global Retail Conference for giving us the opportunity to be here today. What I'm going to do over the next 30 minutes or so is kind of walk you through the landscape of the Bottling Investment Group. The Bottling Investment Group is a consortium of bottlers from the Coca-Cola Company. We own them, we operate them, we run them, bring them back to sustainable profitability, and reintroduce them into our system again. I'll talk a little bit about the handheld landscape and roadmap that we have, some of the simplifications that we've taken from that perspective, and some of the complications that we still have, how we secure and manage some of these devices which are critical, and then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. So the Bottling Investment Group is made up of 22 bottlers. Basically, you see in South America, we run a couple bottlers in Brazil and Uruguay. And for those of you who don't understand what MUC means, it's million unit cases. 24 cans, 12 ounces. So we sell 284 million unit cases in those 3 bottlers. We have a bottler in Germany. So you see about 600 million unit cases. And I also put down the number of outlets that we serve, because I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on. We have a small business that we run, a juice business in Russia, Egypt, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, UAE, Oman, Bahrain, and Qatar. And then in India, we have 1 operation, 2 in China, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Philippines, and 2 bottlers in Japan. So it just kind of gives you a view of the landscape of the Bottling Investment Group. So we're the 2nd largest bottler in the Coca-Cola system. The Coca-Cola system worldwide has 206 bottlers, and collectively about 770,000 employees. And so it makes us the 2nd largest bottler in the system with a lot of complexity, because we're the only bottler that's in 5 geographies. We also run concentrate plants. These are basically the plants that create and manufacture the syrup that we then sell to the bottler, who then creates the final product that goes onto the shelf. And those are separate, 23 different plants in 21 countries, again in 5 geographies. You bring this together, it kind of gives you the landscape for the Bottling Investment Group, and the concentrate plants are 43 bottling operations, 5 geographies, a lot of different complexity, right? So just kind of give you a backdrop. So the composition of the Bottling Investment Group, 90,000 employees. We're part of a total population of 770,000 employees, you heard me mention. 2 things that I want to call your attention to is the bullet points that talk about direct store delivery, and that's a simplification. That's when we basically take our product and pull up to the back of a Walmart, drop off our product. Our merchandiser meets us at the outlet, puts it on the stocks, pretty straightforward. The complication, though, is at 70%. 70% is all of the emerging markets where we have to work with distributors. And there's a lot of complications. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that later on with a case study about the Philippines. So when I talk about handheld devices, I don't talk about the handheld devices and technologies that we use within the enterprise or the ones that we use within our warehouses. I mostly reference here the ones that we use that are basically feet on the street. They're the ones that touch our retailers and that our customers basically get an opportunity to see when we use a tablet device, and we basically show them how the product's doing, where they have better opportunities to increase their profits and revenues. These are the devices that I'm going to be covering and talking about today. So from an enterprise perspective, though, we still have to manage these devices. And if you basically look at the technology trends and the investments that are being made, $23 billion of investment by the top 4 or 5 IT companies in 2010. So they're moving at a very, very rapid pace of introducing technology. We need to make certain that we understand the different operating systems. You heard Alan talk a little bit about Android, Win Mobile, Apple platforms. And from an IT perspective, you need to make certain that you have open architectures, that you can integrate these different operating systems and these different technologies into your environment. And quite simply put, we talked about some college grads trying to come into a work environment and trying to understand the landscape. More importantly, it's not just about having fun and sexy technology, if you want to call it that. People want to be able to do what they do at home at work. I want to be able to Skype. I want to be able to Bluetooth. I want to be able to read my personal email. And there's a lot of challenges from a security perspective around doing that, but we need to start migrating to that landscape. So you look at the mobility landscape and you basically see some trends that are starting to take place. I think since Q3 of 2010, Android has started to outsell Apple and RIM devices. So there's a huge migration moving to that, a lot of introduction of different tablets, and I think it's clear for everyone to see and to understand that the center of the universe from an IT perspective is no longer your laptop or your desktop, right? It's moving to the palm of the hand. And all these tablets and all these smartphones are basically going to be driving the way the technology companies build out their infrastructure and the global networks. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. So the simplification for us, when you looked at all those operations, about 5 years ago we had 29 different handheld technologies. So we decided back then to basically simplify the landscape, and we standardized on Intermec and Motorola from a ruggedized device, and we introduced some tablets. But 3 or 4 years ago, we weren't looking at the Android tablets that we're now testing in our environment. But I think the destination for us is to become device agnostic. So we're starting to do that in a lot of different markets, but again, there's a security complication that comes into play. And one of the things for us that we realized too is that not one solution fits any market. So if you would go to India and you go to Delhi, you could possibly use tablet devices to interact with your customers. But if you go to the outskirts, you're probably going to have to use a ruggedized device, and if you go into the further northeastern and northwestern regions of India, you probably need to use a cell phone or a BlackBerry device with a client on board from a Salesforce automation perspective, right? So different devices for different markets and different business needs. So going forward, though, now we start looking at these different tablets. And I talk about Generation C. Has anybody out there heard of Generation C? Generation C is the new entry, if you will, entry to the workplace where we have these individuals that have lived their adolescence after the year 2000. They've been exposed to all these technologies. They've owned more than one smartphone. They're constantly connected, right? They go to the university. Their device links in automatically to the network. Relevant data gets downloaded to their device. Invoicing gets downloaded to their device, and they can choose to pay later. They're connected through social media with their friends. They have location capabilities to track their friends and their family members, and they're entering the workforce. So Generation C is that they're connected, they're communicating, they're context-centric, they're computerized, and most importantly, I spend a lot of time on the plane. I cover a lot of these geographies. I enjoy watching people walk through the airports just looking down and constantly clicking and almost bumping into each other as they're working on their smartphones and their digital devices. But you look at these individuals, and by 2020, they're going to make up 40% of the population in the US, Europe, and in the BRIC countries. They're going to be driving the digitization that we see today and we experience. When we talk about velocity and how quickly this space is changing, you also have to think about the children that are less than 10 years of age today that are being exposed to these devices too. I mean, I'm sure that many of you here that have children under 10 know how to use your tablet, know how to get on it, probably even get a text message. I have a 6-year-old, and last week I got a text message from her, and Was quite startled that it was actually her. I had to respond back and make sure it was her, and it was. But those individuals will probably start changing the landscape even more so around 2030, 2040. So definitely a clear change in regards to what we're seeing today. And I think the more importantly is that the companies that provide connectivity today and wireless networking are going to have to change dramatically. There's already challenges in Asia. I don't know if many of you are aware of this, that the IP addresses as we know them today are running out, right? So the binary IP addresses as we know them today that were initially launched in the internet, in Asia, they're about a year to, in India, they're about a year away from running out. China's already running out, and they're changing to hexadecimal. So there's going to be some convergence of networks and data exchange issues and things of that sort, but that goes to talk to you about how many users. Every single device we have, if I'm embarrassed to say, if you open my briefcase, I have four or five IP addresses of the devices that I have, because I have Androids, I have my laptop, I have a tablet. So a lot of complication in this space that really happens behind the scenes that we're all not exposed to. 1,694 distributors. 1,694 distributors served 761,000 outlets. So the delta between the 761 and the 779 is what the insights that we have. That we know what outlet it's going to, we know what the brand preference is, we know what the packaging preference is, and for 761,000 outlets, we have no insights. So, and by the way, I'll be very, very clear, in those markets, we're not the only ones in this particular predicament. But we need to try to gather some of those insights. So you see in there also that we have MLPs, market logistic partners. So just one more point though, 515 million unit cases is what we sold last year in the Philippines, right? So if you think about that, they basically serviced over 69% of that volume was serviced by distributors. We just took a bulk order to a distributor, and then they basically took it to the outlets. So we realized that we need to own the outlet. But how can we own the outlet? Because if we own the outlet, we're going to increase our volume, we're going to increase our share, and we're also going to allow and give a better opportunity for these market execution partners, distributors, to increase their profitability, right? So what we did is we implemented some capabilities and software, gave them some desktops and laptops in their distribution centers, and then gave handheld devices to their sales organization. So the handheld devices basically allowed them to start tracking the outlet and taking the product information, gathering it through a web portal to their central hosting location, and then we link into that and we download the information. So by doing that, you basically see that we've increased the number of outlets we have visibility to by 51,000. So a lot of work to be done in this space, but through these wireless handheld devices now, that we basically download our pricing information, we know the number of outlets, we know the routes that are going to drop to that particular day, and we also, most importantly, get brand preferences. So we start understanding the brand preferences of different regions of different countries, and what is the packaging that they prefer. You know, does a liter bottle make sense? Does a 12-ounce can make sense? Do they prefer plastic or sleek cans? So we've gotten a lot of information, and it's become a win-win proposition. A lot of these market execution partners and market logistic partners, we've given them a broader area of outlets to serve. We've given them some technology to improve their efficiency and operating capabilities, and we've also increased their profitability. So it's become a win-win proposition for both parties. So a lot of work to be done. This is just the Philippines. You can imagine the challenges in China and in India. Singapore, not so much. Malaysia, a little bit. But a lot of the emerging markets, that's how they operate. They have thousands and thousands of distributors. I think the total population, it's 11,900. I was going to say about 12,000 distributors in the Philippines alone. China has over 20,000, and India has about 28,000 distributors. So there's a lot of complication. But by gathering some of this information and getting some actionable business insights, we're able to make it a win-win proposition for us. So some of the things that we need to focus on. So you heard us say that we gave the sales organizations of an independent third party that's distributing product handheld devices now that have our brands on there, have order volumes on there, have pricing information, right? So we had to quickly standardize on one technology. We had to make certain that we standardize the business process. We need to make certain that we have a certification process to make certain that before we bring on any of these distributors, that their systems are secure, they link into our bottlers, they then link into our corporate network in Atlanta. we need to make certain that there's a certification process throughout that life cycle. But more importantly, we needed to team up and make certain that we had a partner, and we chose AirWatch to go ahead and lock down our systems to make certain that we had the right securities on the device so we could basically scrub the information if we need to. There's a lot of places in Brazil, near Rio de Janeiro, that if we would lose a device, we know where it is, we probably don't want to go capture, we probably just want to scrub it, right? So there's places where you want to not go get the product, but you want to scrub the data, and there's some places where you need to go retrieve your particular device. But more importantly, AirWatch allows us to also track what's happening with the individual device. So we know with the battery life cycle, sometimes some of our associates, for whatever reason, come back and say, you know what, I couldn't make the 22 deliveries today because the battery ran out. So we had to take their word. It could have been that they took a long lunch, went to visit some friends during the day. We realize now that we could track the battery life cycle, and that's changing a little bit. We also can understand using the software, why did it take 15 minutes at a particular stop when it normally takes 3 or 4 minutes? We come back and have those discussions with the associates also. So a lot of operational efficiencies, and also, you know, a lot of you are probably saying, well, in some countries like in Europe, and it has been the case, you're kind of violating some sort of level of privacy. So we have had to address it with the Works Council in Europe, but at the same time, we're ensuring the security and safety of our associates because we know where they are at all times. So it's really been a win-win proposition for us. So this is a statement that resonates with us quite a bit, and our chairman talks about this. And when you look about talking about what you've done in 125 years, not destroying 125 seconds, you know, security, you've heard about a lot of companies have had breaches of security coming in, and I can tell you that we have well over 60,000 attempts to deface our worldwide sites every day. Every day, over 60,000 attempts. You know, a lot of people talk about 7 by 24 security monitoring. I say 7 by 86,400 seconds a day, because you got to be monitoring it on a daily basis every single second of the day. 60,000 hits to try to deface our sites and try to get into our network. So certification process, very, very important from a security perspective to make certain that you have the right parameters in place, and then having the right security and monitoring capabilities on the individual device is important as well. A couple more things that I want to tell you from an innovation perspective that we've done. We also use handheld devices to go out and track what we call right execution daily. So we have a software that we run on our handheld devices that allow us to go measure a share of visible inventory. So we set parameters in every individual outlet. Every individual outlet has a parameter that says we want to be able to make certain that we have 70% share of visible inventory. We want to make certain that we have points of interruption. So when a customer's walking down an aisle, there's a point of interruption where they could grab an immediate consumption product. We want to make certain that we have a certain amount of advertising in individual stores. So this software allows us to do that. But more importantly, it allows us also to capture our pricing and our competitors' pricing. So down at the outlet level, through handheld technology, we've been able to realize the elasticity of our product and what the commitment to the brand is. So previously, we'd have our auditors go in and visit an outlet, and we'd say, hey, listen, our principal competitor dropped price by 5 cents. We would immediately follow, or vice versa. But today, by using this software and these handheld devices, we could track the pricing, and sometimes we come in a week later, and we've realized that our volume hasn't dropped. Our volume level remained the same because our brand loyalty is very, very strong, and the elasticity of our product will tolerate X amount of cents. So it's allowed us to keep our market share and certainly our profit margin. So we have a pretty exciting tool that we use with handheld devices, and we call it Right Execution Daily, and we have it in 80+ countries already. We continue to push. I talked a lot about the distribution partner and execution. We want to have 5,000+ partners set up on our systems by the end of this year in a lot of the emerging markets. And one of the other things that we're pushing quite aggressively also with handheld devices is RFID cooler tracking. We put out about 350,000 coolers in the bottling investment group every year. It's almost a channel for us. We basically have even planogramming that we put together. If you go, for example, to Brazil and you stand in front of one of our coolers, you probably see right in the middle aisle, you'll probably see the Coke brand, the red Coke brand. But if you go to India, you would see some Coke and Sprite, because the preferred carbonated beverage in India is Sprite. So we even have planograms depending on different regions of a country and within the country itself. Some of our biggest challenges right now is making certain that the retailer understands that that cooler is not a cooler that they could take home and use as a cooler at their house. So that's happened quite a bit in several markets for us. We've also told them that they can't keep their foods in our coolers because we'll find chicken and eggs and all kinds of things in our coolers also. So when I talk about that auditor going and visiting the outlet, they actually scan the RFID chip. So it tells us that the asset's there. It lets us know that they visited the outlet. And part of the score that the merchandiser gets, when I talked about points of interruption, making sure we have the right marketing, share of visible inventory, part of that is the cooler purity, making certain that there's no food, making certain that it's planogrammed correctly, and also making certain that no other product, especially from our principal competitors, is in that cooler. So we're using technology from an RFID perspective to do a lot of those things also. And again, it's worked out very, very well for us. Of course, we do RFID within our warehouses, and Walmart mandates that we move our pallets and things of that sort, but we just started to do this about a year and a half ago out in the market, and it's really helped us quite a bit. So some key takeaways, I think, you always have to look at your landscapes and understand the complications and the simplifications, and I have to be a realist and understand that in India, not one single solution is going to make sense, that I need to have 3 different technologies supporting those different markets. It's a vast territory. Need to make certain we stay close to the business and understand exactly what they're trying to accomplish. Mobility for us is a key strategy. We continue to invest quite a bit in that space. We have a very, very aggressive innovative pipeline. We work very, very closely with the Googles of the world, Apples of the world, Microsoft. We go to the executive briefings, have great partnerships. But it's going to be interesting on where we land in the future. Today, we're not at a place where we could hire someone right out of college and say, what device do you have, and bring it onto our network. We have improved significantly over the last year. We now allow individuals to Skype on our network, get their personal email on their network, starting to introduce iPhones, but there's a big demand to introduce Droids devices, so we're not there yet. We need to get there by the end of this year, but I think it's going to be a plug and play in the future. I think that whenever you hire somebody on board, whatever device they have, GE's heading the right way. I think a lot of people will follow. And then I think the last point that I'll leave everybody with, when you look at all these information that you're gathering now, and you talk about the mobility and how you can capture additional information, I always tell all my leaders across the globe, make certain that when you work with the business, the information you're providing them from a business insights perspective, it's actionable. If it's not actionable, there's no need to be looking at it. Let's make certain we take action. We ask them what are they going to do with the information, and we've had some good partnership with the commercial leaders. And I think that's enabled us to have some velocity to market and continue to earn share. Last year was a great year for us. We increased our volume by 1 billion unit cases last year worldwide. Our principal competitors only increased theirs by 165 million. I'll let you deduct who our principal competitor may be. And we went up from about 1.3 billion servings a day to 1.7 billion. So our intent is aggressive over the next 10 years. That's why activating these distributors is so essential to us. Over the next 10 years, we want to double the volume. What took us 125 years to get to, we want to double that by 2020. So we're getting a lot of push to activate these distributors, a lot of use of technology across all of our countries. And what you saw today was just a piece of what we're doing in the Bottling Investment Group. But when you bring together the Coca-Cola system and the 206 bottlers, we have a consortium. Actually, we're meeting next month where the top 10 bottlers get together, all aspects, commercial, supply chain, information technology, CIOs, and we put a strategy together for the rest of the Coca-Cola system. And we share what our best practices are. So we've already adopted Intermec and Motorola devices. We've adopted AirWatch globally. We're getting into a common ERP system. So a lot of demand to try to double our volume in the next 10 years. So this was my last slide. This basically sums it up. I don't know if we have time for a couple questions that Alan and I could possibly field. Okay.
Thank you. This is reminding me of several matters that I've been studying myself for some time, and I think this is an unusual case study.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I'll speak
There we
closer.
go. Great, thank
We have
you.
to eat the microphone.
I'll stand close to the speaker.
The ability to gather information from the field seems to me to be a distinct competitive advantage. In most cases, if I understand what you described, those 850,000 outlets are probably 90% mom and pop traditional trade. Would that be true in Philippines?
In emerging markets, the
In emerging
majority,
markets.
that's correct. The majority of the outlets are mom and pop.
So
and
there's no
traditional.
POS data available. All you have in the past is shipment information to go on.
That's correct. We probably have less than 100 key accounts, which we would call national.
Modern trade.
Yeah, exactly correct.
Exactly. So are you at this point starting to feel that you have information that's actionable on sort of the macro scale about the behavior of your product in those small outlets? And can you share any insights or kind of top-level insights you've acquired?
Sure. So your question about the insights is pertaining to the emerging market, right? Yeah, sure. Because I certainly have some scenarios for the modern market also that are pretty simple. But so I just got back from the Philippines and I arrived last night at 10 p.m. And I was visiting one of our market execution partners. So they became a market execution partner outside of Manila, about an hour away from Manila, in 2001. They basically serve 950 outlets. And ever since we've given them these capabilities now, they've operated the most efficiently and most profitably than they have since that inception, is what the owner told us. And we've increased their profitability. I know this may not sound like a lot in here, but we've increased their profitability over $7,000 US dollars each month. So they're very excited about that. So we have been able to get some additional insights. So when we get the outlet information now, we go and co-visit with their sales organization and start educating them on how we sell our product. And what are the insights that they're gathering now through our technology that they need to tell that outlet and do what we call suggestive ordering. So we have suggestive ordering and predictive ordering. So suggestive ordering says, last month you ordered Diet Coke, Fanta, and Sprite. And of those three, in your particular outlet, Diet Coke did the best. So I would tell you to order a little bit less of the other products and order more of that for their own profitability, right? And then we have suggestive ordering where we do, and we say, you know what, we want to push one of our water lines. So we'll tell them, this is what we suggest, right? And we predict. So you blend that together and we give them a discount whenever we push additional product for them to sell. So it's been giving us some pretty good insights in regards to what the brand preference is and any innovation from a packaging perspective that we need to do as well. In North America, in modern trade, it's a lot easier. In modern trade, we get POS information, to your point. So I used to run business intelligence a couple of years ago at the company, and we get some POS data from Walmart. We found out that there was a lot of synergistic basket transactions between Dasani water and bananas. So in a lot of these outlets, all we did is we moved our water next to the bananas, and in all those outlets, they realized from 8 to 10% increase in water volume, water sales, right? So it's about having actionable insights, right? And you can do simple things very quickly. So thank you for the question. Any other questions that Alan or myself could answer? Yes, I can.
Okay, Javier, I'm Rick Walker. We just talked outside on
Yeah.
Microsoft. I guess the question I had, no one's more aware of the proliferation of the Android platform than we are. And I'm trying to figure out, you had mentioned as you look in the field in the future, you were going to try to leverage the Android platform and trying to support some of your field enablement. Do you feel security on that platform is going to be sound enough for you to be comfortable with that platform moving forward?
So that's a great question. So the question was for everyone else in the room about Android and the security. We're just, I would say, in the embryonic stages today of looking at that from a security perspective, and we certainly see that there are some voids in the space, right? But I'm glad you mentioned Microsoft, because Microsoft's very important to us. We're just going through a migration of Lotus Notes to Microsoft Exchange. And the benefit of Microsoft Exchange for us is that the handheld devices that Intermec and Motorola that we use run on Win Mobile. So think about having 25,000 sales associates out in the field and you want to communicate something. You want to push out a product, you want to change a pricing, you want to do something very quickly. Normally that associate, you'd have to wait for the associate to come back, try to put a communication together, and communicate to all of them exactly what action you want to take. Now, because we are running Win Mobile devices in Exchange, we're already piloting this in several markets. We could send immediate broadcast messages to all those sales associates. So clearly, Microsoft is a key strategic partner around that space. We've been working with the organization on that pilot as well. But yeah, Android still has some issues. I don't know how much we'll use it. I think we'd probably use the tablets more so, eventually over time in the field. but I think we would use them more in the four walls inside the enterprise. So Rick, thank you, good question.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question kind of similar to that, is how do you see technology playing a role in the vending market, using both technology mobile as well as just technology as a whole in the vending machine market?
Great, that's a great question. So I mentioned earlier I have 2 bottlers in Japan. So for those of you that have been in the Japan markets, you could basically download a UPC code. So I see a lot of people nodding their heads, so okay, they're familiar with this. So you could download a UPC code to your cell phone. You basically identify yourself. I'm Javier Polit, I'm a male, I'm Hispanic, I'm this age group, etc. Right? And I want to download $25 to my cell phone. You could go to the Coca-Cola vending machines, activate that vending machine with that UPC, and then choose whatever amount of products you want. It feeds you, then it charges you and deducts it from your from the credit that you have. So the business insights around that is very, very interesting for, especially in Japan. The cost is expensive still in Japan to do this because you need to have technology on board on the vending machines, and the transmission of the data is expensive, but we know we have to play in that space, that we know it's strategic and it makes sense for us. We now basically know what time Javier went to a particular outlet, does he work in that particular area, and every day he's going between 2 and 4 o'clock to go get his Diet Coke. I'm a Diet Coke drinker, as you guys can see. So we get a lot of insights. We know male, female preferences, and what we do is we then send SMS messages to that device. And if we know that we have a lull, if you will, between 6 and 7, we'll send messages and say we have a discount of 5 cents between that time frame. And it also, before, if you think about it, the insights that we have not only just from a shopper and who's buying at this vending machine, because in Japan, we introduce 200 SKUs a year in Japan. They buy small quantities, they don't buy large quantities like we do here in the stateside. But also from a supply chain perspective. Now we know what's inside that vending machine, and we know exactly how much product we need to take on our routes to not only fill the outlet orders, but also the vending machine. And if you think about that, it sounds pretty simple, right? Well, it helps us with our forecast, it helps us with our production, and it helps us with our fuel efficiency. Because we're carrying less product on our devices, on our trucks, we're only carrying exactly what we need to serve the market for that particular route. So yes, emerging markets, we have a lot of different technologies. Again, I was just focusing on developed markets, I was just focusing on emerging markets, so very good question, thank you.
If I can add to that, a real cousin to mobility and mobile device management is machine-to-machine readable interfaces, which really is the next bastion of all this mobility and cellular and connectivity. So, our product, we work with Walmart, and we're actually helping them with wireless printers, scales, temperature sensors. All of these things are coming alive, and there's a great story of someone had a heart attack in the San Francisco airport, and somebody had donated defibrillators. And so they went and grabbed the first defibrillator and tried to use it, and the battery was dead. They went and grabbed the second one and put it down, and the battery was dead. And they went and grabbed the third one, and by the time they got there, the patient was dead. And it was a pretty big lawsuit because they said these were machine-readable devices that could have been monitored. And there's a wireless network, and there's technology to do that. And shame on you for not. And so it goes well beyond just a good idea, but you think of a hospital environment or so many environments. Every device that you plug in is becoming alive. It's not just your mobile computers, but it's medical equipment, it's installed medical equipment, it's your pacemaker, your parts of your body. It's so many things around us are becoming aware, and it's really adding to the management challenges of the environment around us, not just our smartphones, but really everything around us.
Any other questions? No? Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you once again.